Welcome to the Money to the Masses podcast, putting you in control of your finances. One mic, two idiots, and, according to our latest figures, 3 listeners. Here are your hosts, Damien Fay and Andy Leaks.
Before we start, Andy, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to our podcast sponsors, Money Farm. Now, Money Farm are the largest digital wealth manager in Europe, and they create portfolios of ETFs for their clients. They're incredibly cheap and ideal for somebody who's wanting to get into investing, and perhaps for more experienced investors who don't actually want to run their own money anymore. Now, they will even offer to run the first £20,000 of any of our listeners' portfolio absolutely free if they enter the code MTTM20K into the website at moneyfarm.com. For more information, check out their website. But for now, Andy, let's get back on with the show.
Hello and welcome to episode 128, I think, of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert. As always, Damien Fay and me, Andy Leaks. Damien, how are you doing? Strange start, that.
It is a strange start, but everybody knows that we said we'd probably have a week break. And that respite, we've lost count. So we think I'm convinced it's 128. Not that the number is in any way relevant. It just shows how long we've been going. But yeah, I'm good, Andy. Are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, rested up, had a nice break with the family, and back from the Easter break. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Like you said, Easter break. As you called me off air a weirdo, because obviously I do not like chocolate at all. So from a confectionery viewpoint, the Easter break is not really doesn't really float my boat. Although my children evidently love it. So no, it's been good to have a little sort of mini break. I don't have that much time off. But yeah, the last week has been really good from a slightly different viewpoint for our other podcast as well. Because people, if you listen to this podcast, you should be subscribing to the One Giant Leap podcast that we also do, where I'm trying to encourage people to follow their passions and build the life they want. And our Facebook group has been quite interesting. I mean, Andy's on there as well and does comments and talks to people, but it's growing, and there's been a number of people who've been inspired to start ventures off the back of the last interview in particular we did with Pete Matthew, who's a friend of this show, does Meaningful Money. So that's brilliant to be able to do something where people changes their life and they inspires them to start something. Because do you know what? That's the hardest thing, is to start. All the other stuff is, I suppose it's that phrase about rolling stones and gathering moss and everything. Once you start moving those small steps, you would be amazed when you look back where you've come from. So, I mean, that for me has been fantastic, because it reminds me even more of when I started Money to the Masses. And I just love the idea of doing something, again, that has no ulterior motive other than just to try and make a difference. And that is really sort of dinged my dong this week.
Yeah, it's been really, really good to see the comments and read about you inspiring people. I mean, that's what it's all about. Fantastic stuff.
And also, Andy, I just want to quickly add before we move on, is that you don't have to be trying to change anything yourself. You just want to come along and be a bit of a voyeur and see how we do things. Because in the coming weeks, there are plans to do some quite exciting stuff in there to try and teach people about how to go from just an idea to developing something. And there's some people who've done it, lots of people, even some of the people I interview are part of the group. I might be doing some interesting videos that are live that will be me sort of showing people how to go that next step from just an idea in their head. But anyway, that's the other podcast. What about this week's podcast? A couple of pieces we're doing. Something for everybody, really. We've got some stuff on if you are worried about your online identity. So if you're online fraud and being a victim, a very interesting angle on this is actually more of a, like, once you've been, it's a bit like when you're burgled in real life, what to do after the event as much as anything else. So once you've sorted things out, we've done podcasts where we've done preventative stuff and how to stop being a victim of fraud and what to do at the moment or at the point you've become a victim of fraud. But this is kind of, once the dust has settled, well, is there stuff you can do to try and stop being a victim again? So that's one piece that everybody will be interested in. There's another bit I want to talk about. I'll just give a teaser, $5 a day. So the money equivalent of a $5 a day. And some other little bits and pieces at the end, which I want to look at. A way of making money while you're scouring the internet, looking for bargains. There's quite a nice little idea out there that you can use to make some side income. So we're going to do that. But I mean, one of the things I was going to mention before we move on, not to date the podcast, but it was interesting this week we had a snap election be called. Obviously you were paying attention there, Andy, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Who could have missed it? I mean, I'm not a massive one for politics, but it certainly pricked my ears up.
And the only reason I mention it is because one of the things that people may see, if you're on my weekly newsletter that goes out on a Sunday, go and sign up if you're not, because it covers all the best important stories in one email, just links to them around the internet of the things you should be worried about in a given week and how they affect your finances. If you're not a member, go to moneytothemasses.com/newsletter and you can sign up and join the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who get it every week. But one of the things I'll be talking about in that intro this week is the idea about politics is really important in money at the moment, because we've seen in the last year, we had Brexit, and obviously we had Donald Trump, and we've had various different votes within the European Union, and we had this snap election call. And the thing to pull out of all of those is that they're having probably a more and more immediate impact on our finances than ever before. So take this snap election call from Theresa May this week. The FTSE bombed and the pound shot through the roof. It went up about 2.5% in one day, and I think it's up about 3% or more since that call, which is a huge leap in the currency world in such a short period of time, which is good news if you want to go on holiday, because your pounds are now going to be that little bit stronger. But it also means that people's investments may have fallen if they've been invested in the FTSE 100. Because remember, they tend to move in opposite directions. The pound and the FTSE 100, that is. But the point I just wanted to quickly raise is that politics is becoming more and more important in our finances, but in almost a direct way. Whereas before, you'd think that politics would have an eventual impact on your finances, that long time down the road and whatever the policies are of governments. Because of the way I think social media and the internet and the way we are far more connected, and we're in a world where I think politics are becoming very, very divisive, it means that markets are reacting quite quickly to different things. So it's really just a point to say to people, yeah, start paying attention to politics. I'm not massively a politics lover. I don't go overboard on it. We don't talk about it on this podcast for that reason. But it's good to know, to be aware of what's going on, because it will have a direct impact. And it means also that you should vote. I know that goes without saying, but for the young people who listen to this podcast, of which there are young people who listen to this podcast, it's just not us and older people, Andy. But you need to have a vote, because your vote will have more and more of a direct impact. A bit like the Brexit vote did. I mean, everybody's going to complain they won't be able to get their Marmite, or everything's now much more, 15% more expensive than it was a year ago, and that prices have gone up. But that just shows the direct impact that politics is having right now. So that was not a rant, but that was just a bit of a side thing.
Do you know what I loved about that as well? And you said it's not just about us and older people. I fully expected you to say it's not about old people like us. So you put that distinction in there, which was nice.
Well, that was a bit of a mental flip. I was about to say that, and it was a bit of mental gymnastics.
Is there any truth in the matter that May's just basically doing this because she's due to go on holiday soon and wants to get more bang for her buck with a pound in Europe?
That's the best reason. It's not the reason, no doubt, but it is the best reason that I've heard, Andy, and I like that logic. I think we should try and push that out there. But yeah, the point is that you shouldn't say that. A lot of people sometimes say things like, oh, it doesn't matter who I vote for because they're all as bad as each other, it makes no difference. Sometimes the actual vote itself is the thing that makes a difference, rather than the people who what happens in the aftermath, if you see what I mean. Not necessarily the party. Actually, it's the vote and what it sends out, the triggers it sends to markets. So the vote is important, so make sure you do. Right, let's get on to one of the other points that I was going to talk about, which is what to do in the aftermath of you being a victim of fraud.
Have you ever been a victim of fraud?
Yeah, I have, actually. I've been a victim of fraud where I've had money taken from my bank account. I only happened to be looking through my bank account thinking, well, what's this amount for about £100? And I didn't. It was about £100. And I was like, I don't recognise that. And then looked into it. And it's very hard online, because the banking doesn't give you much information. And when I was sort of looking around, it did seem to be something that was based up north that had taken the transaction. Anyway, rang the bank, spoke to them, and someone had been buying mobile phones, which seems to be a very popular thing to buy when you're a victim of fraud. So I have been a victim of fraud in that regard. So yeah, I mean, like everybody, it just happens. It's one of those things, unfortunately, on the online world, to be a victim of fraud. I mean, that's one of those other tips, that the more you put things out there in the ether that relate to your bank accounts and your details, the more chance you have of being a victim of fraud. I mean, you aren't protected if you never went online. They still can buy and hack credit card numbers from the actual banks and credit card companies themselves. But it is quite a good tip to try and limit some of those things. So, for example, if you have savings in an account, or you have one of those high interest current accounts that you're putting money in to get a good interest rate, then don't use that card to keep tapping in and out when you're travelling on local, like London Underground, or doing things, because you're just fingerprinting that thing everywhere you go. So your savings are in there and someone could just withdraw them. So I always like to have any money that you have that's saved in a separate account to your current account. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what's quite interesting? It goes to show that I've still got quite an old-fashioned attitude towards it. I've been the victim of fraud too. People have tried to open up bank accounts in my name, so not necessarily defrauding me, but impersonating me in order to defraud probably businesses and banks and things. But what I find funny is I spend hours ripping up documents and bits and pieces, putting them through the shredder, and so that when they go through the bin, they're literally microscopic and no one could ever pick up any details. But then on the flip side, I'll happily go online and fill in a million forms for, I don't know, sometimes I want to try and apply for a new credit card or whatever at 0%. I'll happily just fill in all those forms, mother's maiden names, dates of birth, previous addresses, and that's out there. That's out there in the ether. I'm sure these banks and organisations are very careful with the data they do. But, you know, I'll just push that out there online. But anything through my bin, no way, you're not getting hold of that.
Yeah, exactly. And with the online world, you're only as protected as your weakest link. So with their services that are third party that might feed into financial areas of your life, whether it's to see your bank account or other data, or do you know what I mean? If their software encryption or whatever they're doing in terms of protecting their data is very weak, that's how they get in. And I mean, that's how lots of websites get hacked, because they might use third-party plugins and things like that. So they go in via the weakest part. It's a bit like a burglar outside. He's not going to go through the hardest route, is he? If he's got a door that's hanging off the hinges, he's going to go through there rather than try and take out the double glazing window, although they do that.
So you're going to tell us after the event, and you're going to tell us what to do afterwards.
Yeah, this came from reading something by a lady called Sarah, who runs a blog called debtcamel.co.uk, and I know her personally, and she's one of the, I think she is about the only person who is not involved in Money to the Masses that I've ever let write a guest post on the site. I'm just thinking, I'm racking my brains. I think she's the only person I've ever allowed to do it in all the years that I've been running it. And she
Control freak.
I'm not a control freak, but it's one of those things I don't let people write on it other than me and one or two others. But
it's all about keeping the content on message, isn't it, and stuff. I totally understand that.
And the quality high, and make sure it has to be researched, because things we write about can take me days to research before they go up. But she's very good. She runs a blog that is all about debt. And I would go as far as to say there's pretty much nothing she doesn't know about debt. And she doesn't do it for monetary reward, because I think she's already had a career in the city, which she obviously now I think is retired from. So go and have a look at that site if you have any questions about debt or concerns. It's very, very good. One of the things she did point out when we were having an online exchange was a company called CIFA. So CIFA. I don't know if they use the sort of acronym CIFA, but it's CIFA. And what they do is they provide a service where you can have your online persona protected when people go and do credit reports, etc. So the members, so there's lots of companies out there who will be members of this organisation. And so what happens is if you go and try and buy a product or service or take out credit, then you can pay them to have a flag put on your account in that database, which all these companies will check, and to say that they need to be extra careful with anything relating to you because you've been a victim of fraud in the past, so people using your details, and so it tells these organisations to look out for anything odd, to come out extra checks. And I mean, one downside it has is obviously it will slow down applications. So if you were to apply for a mortgage or credit cards, it's going to really slow it down, because as soon as those companies try and do anything, they'll see these flags and they will therefore start making double checks, and it will mean they will get in contact with you and probably have to do lots of perhaps offline checks as well. But if you've been a victim and you are a vulnerable person in any regard, then I think it's a great idea. It doesn't affect your credit score, which is what a lot of people worry about. It costs £20 for 2 years, and so it won't suit everybody, because it's really only for those people who fear that they are vulnerable or more likely to be a victim. I mean, for other people out there, if they want to try something else, then there are, of course, the credit checking agencies that, like Experian, who run payable services where they can just tell you if things have been taken out, like credit on your in your name and stuff. So if things appear on your credit report. But
yeah, I'm still paying £15 a month for mine.
The thing is, you can do it yourself for free by keep checking periodically. But what they do is they end up having this CFA actually have their national fraud database, and they can actually be more preventative. So I quite like it. So if you want to find out more and consider using it, then go to cifas.org.uk and you can find out more. And it's a not-for-profit organisation. Before we move on, Andy, I just wanted to quickly mention 80/20 Investor. Now, 80/20 Investor is my DIY investment service. Do go and check it out. I empower and teach people how to invest their own money. The service provides data-driven fund tables. The data is driven by my own unique 80/20 Investor algorithm, which I created. You also get stop-loss alerts, you get research articles and insights, you get market commentaries, monthly commentaries, and DIY investment lessons, but you also get access to my £50,000 portfolio, which is a portfolio of my own money, which I run live on the site for members to see, and it shows people how I use the service to maximise my returns. And in the first 2 years of doing so, I turned £50,000 into £59,500, which is a 19% return, beating investment managers, professional fund managers, financial advisors, investment banks, passive trackers in the market. So everybody can have a free 30-day trial of 80/20 Investor, and you can claim that by going to moneytothemasses.com and going and clicking on the 80/20 Investor hyperlink at the top of the page. So go and try the service. Let me know what you think of it, and I know from the feedback that you're going to love it. But for now, on with the show.
Good stuff. So, what have we got next?
Right, the next portion is it's actually quite a good word, portion, 5 a day. Okay, so the Financial Conduct Authority, so the FCA, have got a bit of a bee in their bonnet about the fact that there are so many people out there they reckon there's 13 million squeezed consumers. Now, they don't mean squeeze as in all in like a tightly packed, but in terms of their finances, and they're struggling. And they think that financial companies don't do enough to help them. And so they've come up with this slightly odd idea that they want to. They feel the communication between the companies and the customers doesn't go far enough. So they think, well, they try and sell your product, and they do that, but they should be messages. They should be trying to push out there to you about how to run your finances better. And if everybody's doing this, then maybe some of them will sink in. And they gave an example of like the 5 a day analogy that you have in the food world. So everyone knows about the 5 a day eating fruit and veg. That's kind of sunk in for whatever reasons. There are people try and debunk it, but it's been sunk in and absorbed by everybody. And they're saying that they need to create these 5 a day ideas in the world of finance, because giving people ideas with numbers involved is far too complicated. They don't get it. Basically, consumers aren't smart enough, blah, blah, blah. They don't use that word, but that's what they're trying to insinuate. I just was going to firstly read out some of the examples they gave and just wondered what you thought. But the number one was the message should be clean up your finances regularly. And number 2 was manage your borrowing. Don't let your borrowing manage you. 3 was save when you can. Even a little helps a lot. It sounds very much like some form of supermarket slogan. I like number 4, pile into your pension. It's your future income. And number 5 is other people get help to make the most of their money, so can you. I don't know what you think about those, Andy, as a kind of example of what would be a 5 a day slogan for the financial world.
Yeah, I mean, I see what they're doing. They're trying to simplify it. They're trying to break it down, make it into bite-sized sort of digestible chunks where people almost have them as mantras to go about their financial life. I don't know. I think it's good of them. It's responsible. But then again, it's whose responsibility is this? Are they saying that basically the FCA are trying to drive this down from the actual institutions themselves to try and spend money marketing? Is there how's it going to get filtered down to the people?
I don't think it's like all of these things. It's very soft touch. It's saying you should do this. I mean, the premise is they don't. That consumers, they say, don't like being told what to do, but they're happy for you to be nudged and in sort of in the right direction. And they want these nudges to be built in sort of financial rules. Now, for me, I just want to quickly talk around this. I've not got the answer to what I think the financial rules should be. I will come up with some examples. But interestingly, Five a Day, somebody actually gave us a podcast review, didn't they, once saying that we are like their Five a Day. So maybe we are the financial equivalent of the Five a Day rule. So that wasn't me making up. Someone did. Go onto the reviews page for this podcast. Actually leave a review. Come on, people. More of you need to do it. Funnily enough, Andy, I looked this week. You probably haven't seen, but there was a review left this week by somebody that I can't remember the exact words, but I will paraphrase it, which says something like, Andy does an amazing job. Come on, Damien. Keep going. Or something insinuating that it was... If I didn't know better, Andy, I think you were writing reviews in your spare time. Go and look. If you listen to this, go and find a review page. It's very, very funny. They gave us 5 stars, as is the norm.
That does remind me. I must get in touch with my mum, see how she's doing.
But anyway, going back to this five a day idea, I disagree. Because I think that in the world of money, people do quite like rules and things to live by, but numbers can be quite powerful. Now, a good example, one we dealt with probably about 100 episodes ago, where it was to do with the sort of simple rules of numbers. So like the rule of 70 is technically the rule of 72, but the idea being we use 70, that if you have an interest rate or an investment rate, if you divide that number into the number 70, then it will take that many years for your money to double. So to give an example, if you had an interest rate at 7%, then it would take you, divide that into 70, that equals 10. It would take you 10 years for your money to double in size. Now those sorts of ideas are very powerful for people to try and work out what they're going to have when they retire and things like that. But the other thing is, I think there are some quite good parallels with the world of money. I think we should be looking more than just the sort of 5 a day rule. I do think the very simplistic idea of, I suppose, I don't want to oversimplify weight loss, but the idea of healthy eating, maybe eating less, exercising more will help weight loss. I think there's an equation that we miss out on, which is about, of money, is that it's about money in as much as what you do with that money and the money out to sort of dictate how wealthy you are. So we always focus on what people have rather than what they can actually get as well. That's just as important, how much they pay into their pensions, how much they earn in a job. And that's kind of where that One Giant Leap idea came from, to inspire people. I do think that you can give people some simple ideas about numbers. Like, for example, if people listen to this podcast, work out what your hourly or day rate is. Not everybody knows because they're not paid hourly, but if you are, then you know straight away. But if you know what your day rate is in life for what you bring into your house or your total income, then that's a brilliant starting point to know what you can do in the world and the value of anything. So you can sit there and work out that, okay, I want to buy this coat and it's £100. Well, that's, I don't even earn that in a day. I'm going to work a day for that. And it starts to sway your judgment and the way you view money and how you deal with money and how you spend it. But also, you could take that one step further and actually look at the idea of what is your almost daily rent. Now, I'm not talking about rent in terms of money, but if you factor in all your bills and your fixed costs in a month that you've got to pay, and you divide that down by the number of days, there is a minimum amount you have to have and make in a day to be able to survive. And that, again, is another number that if you know what those things are, you can break things down into those building blocks. I was obsessed with that when I was growing up, and I still am to a certain extent. The idea of getting things down to the basic blocks, and then you can build anything you like. I mean, I am a maths student after all, but the idea that if you can get it down to those, well, if I'm earning more than X a day, I'm doing all right. I should be okay. It's not perfect, so if you wanted some of these other ideas, you should be also giving people the financial rules that involve what paying the minimum on a credit card actually means, how long it will take you to pay that off. It's one I always talk about, but if you pay off more than the minimum, or you pay off a fixed rate that's equivalent to your minimum today, as the balance falls, if you keep that amount fixed, you'll pay off sort of 5 times quicker. Now, those are the ideas. So anybody out there listen to this podcast, if you have some ideas for what a 5 a day rule could be in the world of finance, then let us know, because I'm not convinced that people don't want numbers. I'm not convinced that people just want to be nudged, because from my experience, the hardest thing in the world of money, and Martin Lewis has even said this on record completely separately, the hardest thing is to get people to take action. And what I think the FCA are alluding to here is they're wanting to try and get people to take action. And trust me, you can't get people to take action by just nudging them. You have to make it so easy and so powerful a reason for them to do it. They will just follow. And a 5 a day is a good example of that, because people just go, oh, that's easy then, just eat 5 things. You've got to break it down to the small bits.
Good stuff. Actually, I was just thinking, I work in protection. That's kind of what I do for a day job. I work in accounts, but it's in the protection industry in finance. Did they mention protection at all in those 5 sort of mantras, bits of messaging?
No, and when Andy says protection, he doesn't mean like doorman or anything like that. You mean it's like life insurance and things like that. But life insurance is one of the key ones. I mean, you could even have a spin on this where you do get a will. But we've done this before on the podcast. The things I did one not long ago. Have a look. It was the 3 things everyone must do, which is kind of along this theme. And it was get a will, have life insurance to cover your mortgage. They're 2 of the key things. I think that is, again, another form of that 5 a day maybe people should, or they should be making. But no, they don't, Andy. So it's kind of maybe missing a trick there. It's not perfect. I like the idea of what they're trying to stress, but unfortunately, I think they need to do a little bit more with the idea.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what our listeners can do in terms of what ideas they have, and see if they can rewrite those 5 a day, and see if we can come up with something better. Get a bit of social media behind us, and we'll chuck it back at the FCA, and we'll get them to do a better job.
Yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll tweet it. Right, the last piece we're going to do is something about shopping. Now, I'm not the world's biggest shopper. I don't tend to spend much money, not for any other reason that I probably I don't place too much emphasis on having nice clothes, which I probably should do.
To be honest, you don't get that much enjoyment from it. You've always quite openly said that that doesn't float your boat. That's just the kind of guy you are. You, by your own admission, you've got about 10 pieces of clothing that go on a constant cycle, and that's he's always clean, by the way, listeners. It doesn't smell.
If people could see me now, for the voice of a money podcast, I'm basically sitting here in a hoodie, so I look more like I should be going to the gym or boxing in a hoodie. I should sit with my hood up. Oh, actually, Andy, I didn't notice that's a hoodie you've got, Andy. Maybe we are. Yeah, we're money in hoodies. Yeah, so if you are inclined to be shopping, there's an interesting site called justlooking.com. And now I've not used it, but I know some people who have. Yeah, I know some people who have, and yeah, shock horror, I don't use it. But what it does is, if you are the kind of person who goes online, looks around, finds a great deal, says to your friends online, look at this great deal I found, you get a bit of a buzz out of it. The idea is you can use this site, and it's quite popular, where you can post your deal to the masses and make money from it.
What an idea. You explain that premise in about 2 sentences, and before you got to the end, I got it, and I could see that would be so powerful and such a good way to make money. And why hasn't that been done before? Brilliant idea.
I've never heard of it. I hadn't.
No.
And what it does is you go on there and you post your deal, and if people like your deal, they can vote it up. So they like it or they give it the thumbs down, and your deal will therefore rise to the top. And as more people like it, you can then earn money from it. I don't exactly know the premise of how you earn money from the deal itself, but you only get, if it's included in things, I think, and you get a bit of money. There's a weekly prize that happens, I think, or it might be more frequent than weekly, but there's a prize for the best deal, and they give like a £25 prize. The upshot is, from somebody who I know of who's used it, you can earn a small side income of like £50 a month, maybe, if you're posting a few deals a day. But if you're that way inclined anyway, then why wouldn't you? And maybe you're going to find some good deals on the site which other people are posting. So go and have a look. I can't guarantee what your experience is going to be like, but it looks incredibly popular, and it's had some positive reviews from some other people who I know from the online world of money. So have a look and feedback what you think of it, because these companies do end up getting in touch with us, funnily enough, often, if you guys start interacting with their services, to sort of thank us or to try and engage us anymore. We tend to ignore them, but Right, that's it for this week, Andy.
Damien, I did manage to get that review up that you were talking about, and I have to say I'm slightly embarrassed by it. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to work out whether it's just being funny for funny's sake and he's kind of taking the mick out of you a bit because clearly you do all the work, or whether someone's actually having a little pop at me saying that I'm a bit of a big head, because the title says it's all about Andy. And then in the description, it says, great job. Now, if I read this in a sarcastic accent, see if it comes across. Great job, Andy. Yeah, keep up all the hard work. Damien, keep going. Maybe one day you'll be as good as Andy. So, yeah, I mean, it's an amusing
But it does have a
winky,
like emoji winky thing, so it's tongue-in-cheek. So I loved it. Whoever it was who did that, I think it's quite funny. They gave us 5 stars. That's the key part. But that was very good. Yeah, so there you go, Andy. You've got a massive fan base out there.
Yeah, for not saying much and basically telling listeners to do as Damien says, not as Andy does. That should be our motto.
The show would fall apart, Andy, because people would just listen to me drone on about money. Anyway, as ever, if you're out there and want to get in touch, then it's email damien@moneytothemasses.com. Twitter is money2themasses with the number 2. Go and subscribe to this podcast and the One Giant Leap podcast and leave reviews on both of them, and join the One Giant Leap Facebook group as well. So yeah, until next week, Andy, I think that's it. I think we're done.
We are. And just quickly on the One Giant Leap podcast, not giving too much away, if you like this podcast, then you're going to especially like next week's One Giant Leap podcast. We'll leave it there until next week.
Don't forget to claim your free copy of Damien's best-selling book, The 30-Day Money Plan. Sort your finances in just 5 minutes a day, worth $4.99. Just go to moneytothemasses.com/podcast to find out how.